What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Saved Show. This is your host, Justin. This is a weekly updated journal where you get to see in real time as I struggle to become a better man, better husband, better father, and you get to watch as I try to walk closer to God each and every day. It's been a while for a solo episode. I've had some great episodes with guests lately. Love speaking with all these great individuals that I've met in the past year. Speaking with another individual tomorrow. We'll have the Thin Line Believers Instagram page, the man behind it, on. So that'll post next week, would be the plan. But today, for the solo episode, I would like to dig into Acts. And I haven't composed anything like this in the past for the show, so we're going to haphazardly struggle through it together. I've got some notes, I've got some studies, a comparison that I'd like to make for the series. Should be 3 episodes, maybe 4. We could probably have nonstop ties to the subject matter that I'm going to tie it to. But we are coming off of the Easter season when we all reflect on what Christ did on the cross, paid for our sins. We didn't deserve it. It's just God's grace that He's extended salvation to us, so we're all blessed. But I was curious, right after the Easter celebration this year, what the early church looked like. So I thought I would just go right into Acts, right to the very beginning. So I've been reading through Acts diligently with notes, which I haven't necessarily done before, trying to have my own summary or just bullet points of what happens per chapter. So that process has made me stop and go through it a little bit slower, but it's been good. It's been really good. Before I dive in, I did want to say thank you for everyone who is supporting the show by following on Spotify or subscribing on YouTube or sharing it with those around you. Definitely notice a lot more attention to the show, so I'm very grateful to anyone who's sharing it and following. Like I said, a lot of love over on the Instagram page as well lately, so thank you all for that. This whole passion project has been a lot of fun, and like I said about the guest episodes, I'm meeting a lot of great people, continuing to walk closer to God by learning a bunch of new stuff. Last year you could ask me what post and premillennialism was and what are the 5 solas and all these things. And I don't quite grasp everything as far as eschatology goes and history of the church and Christian Reconstructionism and theology, but every day we are struggling to get better, get closer, edify ourselves, gain some wisdom with Christ at the forefront of our thoughts. With that, one more thing. I did get a haircut. If you're watching, if you do watch, I did get a haircut around the Easter Sunday. I had an event called the Iowa Prayer Breakfast that I volunteer with, and I wanted to look a little bit sharper for that event. There's state legislatures and the governor are there, so the long hair didn't quite fit. I do have a really cool driver's license though now, so my picture, long slicked back hair, big unruly beard. That's a good one to have. It's a collectible item. So we're rocking a haircut. It's kind of grown in since we haven't done a solo episode in a while. Other updates, working out. Tomorrow is May 1st when this comes out. And I plan on focusing on kettlebells and doing a pull-up program for the month of May. And in June, we will start marathon training. So I'll probably maybe publish like a training schedule just for myself, mostly to hold myself accountable and actually stick to it, especially with the marathon training. So this month in May, getting into the practice of holding myself accountable using Instagram. I might post my workouts, what I'm doing, what I'm planning on doing, how it's going. Definitely some progress with the pull-up program. I don't think I could do very many right now, but it'd be cool to get back up to 20. There's our first yawn. Just woke up from a nap. But yeah, getting up to 20 pull-ups would be cool by the end of May, if it's possible. And then Marathon training's coming up. It's gonna be a lot of fun, I think. He says. I'm sure in a couple months I'll be talking about running 10 miles and how I might have some regrets for my decisions. At this point, I would like to jump in to the discussion. My theme, or inspiration, I should say, coming off of the Easter celebration, remembering, recognizing, celebrating Christ's sacrifice. I was also watching the new Star Wars show, The Mandalorian. And I don't think that what I'm trying to do is tie Christianity to The Mandalorian. I would think that our Western Christian civilization has influenced the show, and so I kind of noticed things as I watched it. So this episode will be titled, "This is the Way." That's a phrase that the characters in the show say. It's a part of their religion. They're children of the way or something like that. That's what they call themselves. They say this is the way as part of their religion. I'm going to try not to geek out too much on the Star Wars stuff. Big Star Wars fan myself, but that's probably not why you're here. We could have plenty of critiques on the shows and movies, but that's not my intention. I just wanted to go through, a brief history of the show as far as the characters go, and then make the comparisons to the early church in Acts that I found. So 3 or 4 episodes. If that's not your thing, that sounds good. We'll have that guest episode next week, and you can come back and try out Acts with Star Wars another time. But in the show, The Mandalorian is very much a space western. It's set post Return of the Jedi, but before the new movies. So the Empire has fallen, but you can still feel its presence throughout the galaxy. That's the big bad guys still. They didn't all go away right after Return of the Jedi. But we follow this lone bounty hunter, and we get to watch him as he becomes a hero in his neck of the woods. There's a few mainstays areas that he goes, and we learn about the Mandalorian people and their culture as a whole. And so there's a planet called Mandalore. Like I said, I'm going to try to skip through the geeky stuff as quickly as possible. But these people follow their religion to the T. They wear their helmets. Nobody's allowed to see their face outside of their family. They have other tenets to the religion, and they stick to it with zeal. They're very zealous. They're religious extremists. Something we can all aspire to be. And as they go about their adventures in this show, you get to know more and more about their religion, about their people. They're trying to reclaim the planet Mandalore. It was taken from the Empire. So there's, you've got this empire that's looking down on this religion of people, and there's only a few of them, and they grow in number as the show goes on. So, comparison, Roman Empire and a growing early Christian church. As it comes to the early Christian church, in Acts, we see the early Christian group gathering. These people are called the Way, or followers of the Way. And I'll just read this here. The earliest disciples were called followers of the Way, which is important. Christianity is supposed to be a way. It's a journey, a path that we walk on. It's not static. It's constant motion. It's not just one choice, but a lifetime of choices. We've not reached our destination, our best life, our God-given potential, but we're always on the way, and we're called to make a way for others to join as well. We are followers of the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. In Matthew 4:19, Jesus said, "Come, follow me," to his first disciples, and he says the same to us today. It's a walk with him, and we're all just on the way. It's not always easy, but it is that simple, just to choose to follow Christ. So I found this online. I thought that was a good summation of the early church being called followers of the way, being Christ. When it comes to Acts in chapter 9, I just have a few of these pulled up, 4 examples of the way being referenced. In chapter 9, verse 2 is where it's cited, but let me read more of the full picture. This is concerning Saul's conversion in Acts. So Saul of Tarsus, who's persecuting Christians. Meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for the letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed on him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" And in the rest of that chapter, we hear about Saul's conversion. And I believe it's Ananias. I want to make sure I say that right. Ananias is the disciple in Damascus that helps with Saul's conversion there. So that's an important chapter if you haven't read much about Saul's conversion in the past, but I've enjoyed it. Like I said, going through Acts has been pretty cool to see the early church. It's a lot of Saul becoming Paul and then traveling around the area around Jerusalem, Damascus, some Asian principles, I believe that's how they're referred to. So he gets around and makes disciples and creates more of a following of the way. But right here is the first instance where it's referred to as those who belonged to the way, followers of the way. Another example in Acts 19, we see there's a riot in Ephesus. About that time, there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in a lot of business for the craftsmen there. He called them together along with the workers in related trades and said, "You know, my friends, that we will receive a good income from this business, and you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray a large number of people here in Ephesus and in practically the whole province of Asia. He says that gods made by human hands are no gods at all." Another reference. Saul. I forget how he's referenced here. Paul is converting people to become members of the way, to be early Christians. Here we are in Acts 22, just two more examples. And I want to read more so what the background is, so the context. I don't want to just handpick things. So this is Acts 22, just verses 1 through 5, I'll give you. So bear with me here. "Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense." When they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. I believe Paul is here. Paul is defending himself from members of the Sanhedrin or other Jews who are persecuting him for going around and claiming Christ as king. Then Paul said, "I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. I studied under Gamaliel and was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women, throwing them into prison. As the high priest and all the council can themselves testify, I even obtained letters from them to their associates in Damascus and went there to bring these people in as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished." Here, as part of his defense, Paul recognizes his history with the church being a persecutor before he becomes Paul, the apostle, an important individual in the early church. But here he says he persecuted followers of this way. And way is capitalized, by the way. I'm not sure that I've been saying that. So it's recognized as being an important distinction. So that's verse 22. The last verse in Acts is 24:14 is where it's recognized. But let me read a little bit more. In verse 10, when the governor motioned for him to speak, Paul replied, "I know that for a number of years you have been a judge over this nation, so I gladly make my defense." Paul again defending himself. "You can easily verify that no more than 12 days ago I went up to Jerusalem to worship. My accusers did not find me arguing with anyone at the temple or stirring up a crowd in the synagogues or anywhere else in the city, and they cannot prove to you the charges they are now making against me. However, I admit that I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they call a sect. I believe everything that is in accordance with the law and that is written in the prophets." So here, Paul, in defending himself, recognizes himself as a member of the way. So I think it's cool to learn the history of the church, how the way, based on what Christ said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, became something that Christians were described as being followers of the way, followers of Christ. Not necessarily something that I had learned before, going on this study myself, just mostly paying attention and reading reading scripture. But as I mentioned, I'm reading Acts, I'm watching this Star Wars show, and everybody's walking around saying this is the way. So that stood out to me. And again, I think what I'm recognizing is Christian themes within the show that have shown itself as a religion in this show. But what does this mean to us? What am I trying to get at with the comparison? In the show, they're persecuted heavily. The Mandalorians are persecuted. They, like I said, have a overwhelming force of an empire set against them. It's a very small group. And as we, the church, head into the future, I'm not saying that there's an evil empire out there, but maybe there would be. The American empire could be set against Christians, even more so than it is today, where we might find ourselves becoming more so like Christians in other nations, where we need to meet at homes in smaller groups, where we need to hide our Bibles, where we would truly face persecution. I think we in America need to prepare for such an outcome. Maybe history goes that way. It's been the history of the church to be persecuted, and that's kind of the promise by becoming a Christian. You're going to be persecuted and hated by the world because they hated Christ first. So as I make comparisons to the show, we need to have zeal. We need to have this zealous nature about our faith, to cling to it and never compromise. This is the way, to follow Christ, to be persecuted and hated, like I said, to love people, to show grace and truth and compassion. And we'll make some other comparisons to the show. I found a couple of examples. But their phrase, this is the way, I think, doesn't need to be adopted. But it's important to think about as you go about your daily life, what does the outsider perspective look like? Are you a follower of the way? Are you doing the things that are Christ-like or small Christian? Another fun fact that I learned, the Christian as a term was first used in Antioch. So next time you're around there, that's a fun fact for you. But from an outsider's perspective, are you reading? Are you in your Bible? Are you praying? When we look at Daniel up against an empire, an adversary of his own, he was praying every day and he was persecuted for it. And it was a trick that others played. I guess trick might be the wrong word, but he was praying every day. People wanted to get rid of him, so they created a law around prayer to kind of get him. But it was just a part of his day. He didn't go seeking trouble. He was, from the outsider's perspective, following the way. He was praying, and that's just how he lived his life. From an outsider's perspective, are you a member of the way? I pray that whoever's looking at me in my life could see that guy's a member of the way. That guy's a Christian. And not simply because I go to church on Sunday or I talk to myself and others occasionally about faith, but what does it look like when I'm alone or when I'm out and walking out in the world? Do I hold the door open for people? Am I afraid to mention God when it comes up in conversation, or standing up for a biblical principle in conversation? Things to think about. But I did really enjoy in the show that they said, this is the way. It's a good phrase, greeting, a way to show agreement is what it's used as. There's a couple examples, like I said, where I might try to insert some clips from the show to give you more background. But as far as first sessions go, those are some of my thoughts, going over a brief history why the church was called the Way in Acts. It's a great study. It's more of a historical piece. If you haven't read it, I believe it's been verified by historians. It's good stuff. Good stuff, big stuff. But go check it out. I've enjoyed reading Acts. We'll do more of this, going over just a couple of comparisons, trying to leave out a lot of the Star Wars stuff. It's not why we're here, but going through and finding examples from the early church, things that we can do today that would make us more and better followers of the Way, followers of Christ. With that, I will bring us to a close today. I think this went pretty well. It's been fun. If anything, I'm doing this haphazardly, and we might fail a couple times, like I said, and that's fine. What I'm trying to do is learn myself, and maybe I come on here and share a couple of insights. This podcast, I've said it before, is sort of like an echo chamber. Isn't the right word, but good ideas come through this show, and maybe you've heard it for the first time, and that's good. So I might not have all the original ideas myself, but if I quote someone or share something with you guys here and you've never heard it before, I think that it's fine by me. It's good stuff. God is on the move. Tell you what, it's on the move. So we are followers of Christ. As my friend says, sin is dead, death is next, Ave Christus Rex. So shout out to Cole if you're listening. God bless you, sir. It is Sunday afternoon. I hope everyone is breaking bread, enjoying some time with family after their church service experience. And maybe kids do like Bible study stuff on Sunday nights. Or is it just Wednesday? Or both? Let me know. We are followers of the Way. This is the Way. And this has been The Save Show with Justin. Don't forget that you are saved through Christ.